My name is Shannon Palmer. I have my
This meeting
MSW.
is being recorded.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I'll just restart. This is helping your child cope with stress and anxiety. We have two hosts hosting today's webinar. First, we'll do introductions. My name is Shannon Palmer. I have my master's in social work. I have been a high school guidance counselor. I'm the high school guidance counselor at Hamden Charter School of Science at the East Campus in Chicopee. I have had 2 years of school experience and 7 years of clinical work working with teenagers, adults, and children coping with co, um, co, co um, issues, including anxiety, stress, depression, etc.
And I'm Crystal Terrace. I'm a middle school adjustment counselor at Hamden Charter School of Science, the West Campus. I have 5 years of school experience, and this is my 4th year at Hamden Charter. So I work with middle schoolers on their social emotional needs and many other things during the school day.
So basically part of this webinar, the context include, we're going to learn about what stress and anxiety is, why our students are so stressed, signs that your child is struggling, how to cope and how to help, and more. So we first wanted to start off with a poll. So everyone is going to be able to answer this poll. So on a scale of from 1 to 5, how stressed do you believe your child is? So you should be able to answer the poll. Were you able to get the poll attendees?
I'm not sure if it's popping up, so how about we move along from that? We'll just here, maybe people can put in the chat. You can answer how stressed you believe your child is, and we can take a look at the answers afterwards.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So let's start off with some basics. So what is stress and what is anxiety? And is there a difference between the two? Because we hear them kind of in tandem a lot, stress and anxiety. We hear a lot, they go together. So stress is a normal response to pressure. It can have physical and mental symptoms. It can be the result of real events like tests, interpersonal issues, illness, and many more things. Stress can be long-term or short-term, and stress is something that everyone experiences at some point in their life, at least. Anxiety is kind of similar but different in a way, so it's more worrying more than is necessary about something. It can also have physical and mental symptoms, and it's often more directed towards the future, the what ifs, and the unknowns. Anxiety can also be long-term or short-term. So most people experience anxiousness at some point in their life, and that's the short-term, and some people experience it more long-term. Can stress be a good thing? The answer is yes. Stress does have a purpose. It's a natural response to stimulus in our environment. So reaction to an event like a test that can help motivate you to get through it successfully. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. It can also be a response to danger that helps you maintain your safety. So if you see something like a car coming down the street while you're crossing the road, that helps you, make sure that you get out of the way. And things like school and friends are common stressors for young people. On the other hand, stress and anxiety can also cause harm. So they have many similar symptoms that can be both mental and physical. So we're talking about anger, tiredness, sleeping problems, irritability, stomach issues. Chronic stress and chronic anxiety can lead to long-term health issues. Some people may turn to drugs or alcohol to handle how they're feeling, which can lead to addiction and substance abuse. And problems with interpersonal relationships can also occur when stress and anxiety are not handled effectively. So some things for parents to be aware of in your child and look out for. Something like changes in mood. So if your student is frequently sad, upset, or just different from how they normally act. Changes in sleeping patterns. So sometimes it's sleeping much more than usual or taking naps during the day a lot, more than like your typical 20-minute nap, like if it's like an hour or more every day. Or some, on the other hand, students might have trouble falling asleep, or they might wake up frequently in the night and find it hard to go back to sleep. You want to be on the lookout for frequent physical symptoms like headaches, stomach aches, feeling nauseous a lot, changes in behavior such as acting out, not following rules, or getting in trouble. Changes in ability to concentrate. So difficulty concentrating is often a symptom of ADHD. However, it could also be a sign of being overstressed or having anxiety. Anytime your student might be avoiding activities, whether it's something your child used to like doing or it's avoidance of trying new things, every now and then they might not feel like doing something. But if this is very frequent, that could also be a sign of being overstressed or anxious. Students frequently expressing feeling worried about things like school, the future, worrying about something happening to loved ones or things like that. If they're frequently, voicing these thoughts, that's, a pretty obvious sign that they're stressed or anxious. And changes in eating habits, those can be normal as children grow. However, to be on the lookout for major changes, as some children might turn to food as a coping mechanism, or on the other hand, they might be eating less due to not feeling well as a result of being overstressed.
So I first wanted to talk about the poll. So I did get some of the results from the poll, and we did have a scale from 1 through 5, and most of you guys did answer that you believe that your child is a 5 out of 5 stressed. Some people did put 3 and 4. So obviously you're very concerned about your children, and you were looking for ways to, find coping skills for your children and how you can help. So I really appreciate you all being here, and I apologize that we weren't able to see the poll when we first saw it, but thank you guys for answering the poll. So there is such thing as positive stress. So what is positive stress? So basically, positive stress is stress that motivates your child. So things like a basketball game, something that they're looking forward to, but that might be stressful. So when it's challenging stress, that causes a chemical reaction to help motivate and face the challenges. So usually, it causes a imbalance in their chemical brain. So some of their neurotransmitters will usually start firing. And so what you want to do is you want to, and so can we get to the next stage, please? So how can parents use positive stress to help your children? So you don't want to do the work for them. So when you're seeing a child dealing with stress, it can be very, it can be very put you in a vulnerable position because you want to help them and you want to do the work for them. However, you want to teach your child how to perform the task on their own rather than doing the work for them. So if they're stressed about a basketball game coming up, you don't obviously want to do the basketball game for them. You want to teach them how to use different breathing breathing techniques or different coping skills on how to relieve some of that stress. You also want to validate those feelings. So if they're feeling stressed and they're feeling anxious, you want to empathize with those feelings. Don't belittle their stress by saying, oh, don't be stressed about that, you're going to be fine. Or don't amplify it, saying, yes, you should feel stressed, because that just invalidates them. So you want to validate their feelings. So if your child says, I'm feeling very anxious about this game, you want to say, I understand how you're feeling, and how can I help you? Next, please. So life events obviously cause a lot of stress for your child. So there can be good and difficult life events. So good life events like birthdays, graduations, and traveling can be very stressful for children. You know, a big birthday coming up can be something that causes them stress, whether or not their friends are going to wish them happy birthday or remember their birthday. If it's a big milestone. So I work with high schoolers. So if it's, you know, a quinceañera or a sweet 16 or 18th birthday, those come with a lot of responsibilities. So, you know, those can be big life events that cause a lot of stress. So you want to help prepare for them, help prepare for what's ahead. So if it's a big birthday or if it's a graduation, we have all been through birthdays or graduations that we can use our own experiences to help our children prepare for what's ahead. So if they're feeling stressed, you can say to them, when I was feeling this way, I did this or I felt this way. And so that they can understand that I am not alone in this situation. So then there's difficult life events. And unfortunately, life happens and we deal with deaths, moving, being at a new school. These can be very stressful life events for a child. And so what you want to do is you want to listen to them. You want to understand where they're coming from and understand what they're feeling. You want to provide support and you want to set simple routines. So if it's a death, some children may have never experienced a death. So you want to have simple routines, making sure that they're having breakfast, lunch, dinner, making sure that there's nothing out of the ordinary or out of abnormal in their life that's popping up that can cause more stress. You want to make sure that their life is as simple as possible so that way they can understand their own feelings around that life event. Can we go to the next page, please? Thank you. So then there's chronic stress. So chronic stress is when stress lasts more than a few weeks. So examples can be neglect, violence, family hardships, etc. So when kids experience chronic stress, that can affect their own body, their own physical, mental health, and you know, you want to make sure that you're there to help them. So you want to provide support. You just want to be a person that is there for them, whether it be just being there physically or asking how you can help. You want to provide some coping skills. So some good coping skills can be breathing techniques. A really good one is that we're going to be talking about later is like a box method. So using, you know, breathing techniques for 4 and 4. And then you also want to let them take breaks. So taking break from that stress. So allowing them to have an outlet, having them do something that they enjoy. So that can be self-care, that can be, you know, a bubble bath, that can be watching a movie that they really enjoy, that can be anything that they can take away from the stress and something that can provide some happiness for them. So then there's traumatic stress. So then that's stress from traumatic events. And unfortunately with life, traumatic things may happen. So that may be car accidents, injuries, abuse, or violence. And these can be so when we feel this way, when we see our children experiencing traumatic stress, we want to be there for them. So you just want to listen to them. You want to reach out to collateral help. Collateral help can be reaching out to a therapist. That can be reaching out to a social worker, that can be reaching out to their school, that can be reaching out to their guidance counselors, and that can be just reaching out for any sort of help that you can get, because when it comes to traumatic stress, you want to get more help as possible. So you want to also allow them to use coping skills like breathing techniques, self-care. You want to make sure that they have like different ways on how they can relieve that stress. And how you can do that is by, you know, allowing them to talk about their feelings, but also allowing them to have a break as well.
Okay, so before we get more into coping strategies, let's talk about a few things that you can build into your family's daily lives that can help with stress and increase not only your physical, but mental and emotional well-being. So just a few tips here for your every day-to-day life. So getting some physical activity in there, whether it's a walk, a run, kind of whatever works for you and your child. Um, Sports, working out, anything like that, something that they would enjoy doing. You also want to have family time, such as during dinner or another time of the day, and having your child spend some time with their friends. And ideally, that would be face to face if and when possible, not just hanging out online. It doesn't necessarily count as spending time with others. Sometimes they're on, video chat and stuff that works too. But ideally, some face-to-face time with friends is really helpful. Outside of school, that is. So on the weekends or after school or something like that, you want to try to have some time with that and with the family as well. So having a healthy diet as much as possible. I know it can be kind of difficult, but nutritional eating habits as much as possible can really help just with your physical and mental health. And then finally, making sure that your child keeps a consistent sleep schedule so that they're not staying up late playing video games or on their phone. So these are just some basic things to try to build into that every day to day. So we have a second poll here. So many people already have some coping strategies, even if we don't necessarily call them that. And I'll get into a lot more coping strategies and ideas in a few minutes. But first for the poll, can you think of any coping strategies that you and or your child already use?
You can also put those in the chat as well.
I believe the poll is actually working. I just can't see it. So if you can see the poll, that's great. And if not, you can put it in the chat for sure. So I'll take another second to do that. Okay, so I'm going to move on and start talking about coping skills. So how you can help your child, and you can use these for yourself. So it's a win-win, especially if you find that you have some of the same coping skills, maybe doing some activities together. So here's a list of some coping strategies that can be used to help with both stress and anxiety. So we'll get into a couple more of these in more detail in just a minute. But just about these. So different things will work for different people. So sometimes it might take a little exploring to find what works for each individual person. What works for you might be different for what works for your child. So that's okay. Sometimes we try things and they don't work too good. That's okay. You can try something else. So here's a really good list of things to at least start off with. So, talking, writing, nature, whether it's going out into nature or listening to it on an app or something, coloring, any kind of movement, hobbies, music, breathing, which we'll talk about more in a minute, reading, art, creativity, and many, many more. So there's lots of things that can be considered coping strategies and coping skills that some, like we said in the poll, like some of them you might already be doing that, or your child might already be doing that. So when you're thinking about these, if your student doesn't like doing something, then it likely won't be an effective coping strategy for them. So for example, some students don't enjoy the act of writing. So journaling or writing creative stories on their own time might not be the best coping strategy for them. Now, if they like doing that, maybe they don't like writing in school necessarily, but they like writing their own stuff on their own time, that's great. If that works for them, that's awesome. And for some students, it might not work for them. Another example I see a lot is with art forms. So art can be a really good coping strategy for some students. A lot of people use it to express themselves and de-stress. At the same time, for students who are finding that it's more anxiety producing, if they want their work to be perfect, then that might not be a good coping strategy for them. It might be a good hobby for them, but if they're trying to de-stress, then they might want to try something else out. Okay. So breathing exercises are kind of the number one thing that I practice with students who are feeling stressed or anxious. And there are many different ways to use breathing as a method of calming. Your lungs are always with you. And I often tell students breathing exercises are things you can do anywhere you are, anytime, even if you're in class, if you're worried about what other kids think. Breathing, no one will really notice probably that you're doing a breathing exercise. So the easiest one to remember is called box breathing, which I kind of illustrated here. So there's 4 sides to a box, right? So you kind of follow the directions as I wrote them here. Count to 4 for each side. You can do 3, you can do 5, 6, 7. We want to do what works for us individually. So if 4 is too much or too little, just change the number. But this one's the easiest because it's the same for each time. So you breathe in for whatever count you want, you hold it for the same count, and then you breathe out for that, and then hold it and start it all over again. I also like to use the Calm Breathe Bubble video, which you can find on YouTube. I linked it here as well. I play this video almost every day for different students who visit my office during the school day. Sometimes a student who comes to me frequently will just, come into my office and we'll just look at each other and I'll know it's time to pull up the breathing video. And then we take a minute or two, do the breathing, and then we can, maybe talk about what's going on better now that we're a little bit more calm. So those are some really good things to do. And there's lots of different ways that you can do it. Like I said, how it works for you. And there's a lot of information online about that. There's also something called grounding exercises. So this doesn't mean grounding your child. This means using your senses to focus on, to ground yourself and orient yourself to focus on your surroundings. So one way to do it, as I've listed here, is looking around whatever space you're in and finding 5 things that you see. Then you can close your eyes and try to find 4 things that you can hear. You could keep your eyes closed for the third one too. So find 3 things that you feel. And then a little bit harder is 2 things you smell and 1 thing you taste. So this can also be really, really flexible. So sometimes I'll have kids find everything in a room that's their favorite color. So there might be, 20 things that are their favorite color. And I try to have them look around, see what they can see, and count as many things as possible. Same thing with hearing. That one is really, really helpful, having a child close their eyes if they're comfortable doing that, and just trying to listen to how many sounds and all the different things that they can hear. That can be really grounding and really calming for students. And we also have positive self-talk. So this is another one that I talk to students a lot about, especially before big tests coming up, because I hear a lot of students saying, I can't do this. So like I've shown here, you want to notice when you're having those thoughts, or if you hear your child voicing those thoughts, things like, I can't do this, I'm not smart enough, it's too much to handle, I'm going to fail, things like that. Try to have them change those thoughts to something positive, like, I can do this. I've come a long way from where I was. I will do the best that I can. Taking notice of those negative kind of thoughts and turning them into more positive self-talk, even if they don't believe the positive side of it, if they tell themselves that enough, it really can affect their mindset and then how they actually do with things. So we want to have them try to notice that, reframe their thoughts, and then practice repeating those positive thoughts to themselves. Okay, so a few words on seeking assistance. So sometimes more help may be needed for your child than what you can provide yourself, and that is totally okay. So we don't have to do it all alone. Seeking help from a mental health professional is a common and sometimes necessary step to make sure your child is supported to handle the things that they're feeling. So reaching out to your child's pediatrician is often a good first step. They can help set you up with someone or give you resources. You can also communicate with your child's school. That's important. Sometimes school counselors or school social workers may be able to provide information or help get services set up. And then making sure to follow up with those providers if you don't hear back from them. There's sometimes it might be necessary for you to, reach out to them a couple times, especially during modern times. Waiting lists can be really long. There are a lot of people searching for those services. So you might need to reach out to them if you've been waiting a long time for them to reach out to you. Okay, and I believe this is my last slide. So just some really important things when you're talking to your child. Being patient with them, because they might not know how to accurately or appropriately express what they're feeling. Especially for younger children, it might be harder for them to kind of really say what's going on with them. So you want to provide a non-judgmental space to speak with you, and that can help them better process their emotions. It might be worrying to hear your child express their stressed or anxious feelings. So try to remain calm so your fears don't further trigger their fears. It might be really worrying for you to hear about some of the things that your child is worried about or stressed out about. But it's really important to not respond with anger or annoyance or anxiousness in return. So you want to try to remain calm during those conversations. And you just want to be available for your child. So just knowing that you're there for them when they need comfort can be a major support for your child's emotional well-being and development. Do your best to validate how they're feeling. Like Ms. Palmer said a few slides ago, even if you don't quite understand what they're feeling or don't agree with their concerns, try to validate them and tell them that you hear them. And finally, we can't always fix the problems that our children are facing. We can't always make their stress go away. But following all of these tips can really help. And above all, just listening to your child and hearing what they're saying. Okay, we have some sources, and that's it. So please let us know what questions you have.
I did see that there was one question, and thank you, Ms. Norman, for answering. But how long per event should we use these coping skills? Somebody can draw they can draw and color for hours. So is the recommended time? And so it was answered that it would be helpful to check in with your child when you notice that they are starting to relax. You can ask how they are doing. If the anxiety is reducing, then you can give it a limit. So example, like how about we start dinner in 6 minutes? Stuff like that. Is there any other questions that people have? You can put it in the chat, or you can speak as well if you'd like.